tweeting about that this morning.
The CS2 is such a popular paintball gun. Naturally, I was excited to try out the replacement, the CS3. So I did what I always do when new stuff comes out, go to SEC Paintball, decide what color I want, and we did a part swap and ended up with this silver and black. It's pretty cool. Since the EMEC came out about 5 years ago, it's almost the only gun I use. I mean, every weekend I go to the paintball field, I'm most of the time using this EMEC. I don't really do any maintenance, I don't change any O-rings, I just use it and the thing keeps on shooting. That's why Planet Eclipse is my favorite paintball gun company, because they simply make the best paintball guns. So you go out to the paintball field and screw a tank straight on this thing and it just leaks like crazy out of the grip frame. Which is weird, you know, these guns, like I said, are normally super reliable, and we even put a tank on it at the paintball store. It didn't leak and shot perfectly fine, and now it's just leaking. And you know, spending $1,800 on this, I was kind of hoping it'd work. The thing's leaking from inside the grip frame. You can hear it really easy, but can't really feel it. It's leaking so bad the gun won't shoot. So normally when guns leak from this area, it's often that seal in between the trigger frame and the pops on off. So I took that out and inspected it, looked perfectly fine, but you know, I don't know, maybe not. Flipped it over, put the pops back on, aired up the gun, perfectly fine. Thing rips now, I don't know, good to go, I guess. The thing was perfectly fine, shot very, very, very good. Really excited to test this thing out, but the CS3 feels about the same as the CS2. The ergonomics are nearly the same, just a touch different. Holding it though, the CS3 trigger frame does feel a bit smaller than that CS2. It's not way different, just a bit smaller up top. It kind of reminds me of the way that my EMEC or the ETHA 3 feel. Has a little bit more of a taper. You can kind of tell it's a little thinner at the top and gets a little bit wider at the bottom. The frame on the CS3 isn't as steep as the CS2 though, and reducing that angle on the CS3 frame just kind of helps move the grip frame back a little bit, making the gun feel a little bit longer. And it's also actually longer just because the gun's longer. It's 9mm longer than the CS2. You know, I've used all of the Planet Eclipse guns, and I think my favorite is the EMEC. Well, maybe not. Maybe the Geo 3.5. The 3.5 is probably my favorite gun. And this CS3 really reminds me of the way that gun shoots. It's very, very smooth and really just satisfying. I really like it. Planet Eclipse did try to recreate that Geo 3.5 with the Geo 4, but I don't know. I didn't really like my Geo 4. It didn't shoot that well. And I really like the way this CS3 shoots. It really reminds me of my 3.5. It doesn't sound exactly the same, and obviously the ergonomics are different, but it's probably the closest gun to my 3.5 that Planet Eclipse has released since the Geo 3.5. If you're like me and didn't like your Geo 4 and want to try one of these CS3s out, buy one from bfpgear.com, where you can find all types of part swaps just like my silver and black. And you know, I actually really like this all gold one. Maybe I should have got one of these gold ones. Oh well. Or you can trade in your Geo 4 for credit toward a brand new CS3. bfpgear.com have been a long-time supporter of this channel, so buy stuff from them so they keep sponsoring these videos. One of the reasons the CS3 does shoot well is because it's coming with Planet Eclipse's new version of the Gamma Core bolt system, the OP Core. Planet Eclipse have also increased the volume of the CS3 by 50% compared to the CS2. So that volume increase is going to help lower the pressures a little bit. Technically, the CS3 runs at 10 psi lower, which isn't that much different. They have increased the air efficiency by about 10 to 15%. CS3 is coming with Planet Eclipse's new S63 barrel system. You get a barrel back, a barrel tip, and two inserts, the 685 and a 689 insert. You know, to me, barrels are barrels. I feel that like if it's made well, it's probably going to shoot well. They are just tubes of aluminum. But the Planet Eclipse stuff is made very well. And one of the things I like about these, you can just buy individual inserts. You don't have to buy whole barrel backs. So you can buy Planet Eclipse inserts, or even Inception Design sell alternative sizes to Planet Eclipse. They're only 25 bucks. They're really cool. I like these barrels a lot. Like the CS2 Pro, the CS3 is coming with two bolts. You're going to get the FT and a hard tip bolt. The FT is a soft tip bolt that's been redesigned a little bit. It's much more open than the previous faces. That open face should technically allow you to get a little bit more airflow and in theory have lower pressures, while that Venturi hard face bolt should allow airflow to be a little bit more evenly distributed around the paintball. So say for instance, if you're having breaking paint problems, going with that Venturi bolt may be a little bit easier on paint. But I would bet if you put both of these bolts in there and, put one bolt in one gun and another in another, or just swapped them around or something, no one would have any idea. I don't think that either of these have that much of a performance difference. I think that if you're having issues, right, like you're having problems breaking paint or velocity issues, at least you have something to try a different bolt style. But generally, I don't know if they're that different. Something I've always really liked about the Planet Eclipse guns is just how easy they are to take apart and fix. And that's a good thing because after lunch, the CS3 is leaking again. This time I just took the pops off and just put it back on. I didn't flip that seal, I didn't inspect the seal, nothing. And it just worked. So even just taking it out and putting it in, gun worked perfectly fine. I was weird, I was like, I don't know. Maybe that seal's too small, maybe somehow there's like the channel in the pops and that trigger frame aren't cut right and the seal's just not going in there right. And then I remembered, I can just call the guy who designed the gun and ask him.
I know that you think it's that seal, that gasket seal.
Yeah.
Do you know the brass bit that screws into the top of the pops?
Yes.
We call it the HPR body. It's the brass bit that the piston stem goes into it. The top O-ring on that is actually slightly too loose a fit, so sometimes when you gas it up, that doesn't pop into place and seal.
Okay.
So there's a really, really simple fix, which is in the manual, that brass piece has got two number 16 O-rings on it, two 016 O-rings. Mm-hmm. And if you just swap the top one out for a 14 by 2 O-ring, that'll fix it permanently.
Okay.
It's the actual act of taking the pops off and putting it back on again. Sort of reseal.
Sure. That makes sense, I guess. That's why just taking off that regulator and just putting it on worked. It helped to move around that top O-ring or just, helped kind of reseat the thing. It turns out that all of the 16 size O-rings that shipped with the CS3 and the ones in the part kit are on the lower end of the tolerance. So they are just a little too small. So some of the guns work, some of them don't. But really just swapping around that 14 by 2 O-ring or finding brand new 16s that aren't in the CS3 kit and changing that top O-ring just gets rid of the problem. And now I've aired up the gun maybe about 100 times. I've tried a bunch of times and it just works. And it just sucks that out of the box, you're spending $1,800 on one of these high-end guns and it's not working. But that shouldn't be anyone's problem now. So anyone who sees this video in the future, this isn't going to be a problem. So Planet Eclipse is just going to switch O-rings in the factory. That's really easy to do. Or any paintball stores that have these guns should all be aware of this problem and hopefully taken the brand new guns out of the box, switched O-rings around, and then tested them. So anything that they're going to be selling is not going to have this problem. It's just me in the first couple batches of not even couple batches, the first batch of guns. The regulator on the CS3 is the SL5 in the same exact location as the CS2 inside that grip frame. We kind of talked about the way that grip frame feels a little bit, how it feels a little bit different. I actually really like the new feel, but there are also two new boards inside the frame instead of the one that was in the CS2. This doesn't really affect much. It doesn't really matter as far as performance wise. It's just a lot easier for Planet Eclipse to get parts for their guns. I mean, COVID, they had a big problem with parts. So I think redesigning these guns to take all of the same boards just makes it much, much easier for Planet Eclipse to get parts and for stores to stock parts, because now you have to have two boards for all their guns rather than a CS2 and a CS3 and an LV2 board and a 180R board. They just have two boards that work in all of their guns. And I did say 180R. That thing just came out and it's also including those two new boards and actually a version of this OP core. We've talked a bit about how the trigger frame feels different, that rear grip, but the front foregrip feels identical to the CS2. It's going to come with the exact same foregrip, so it slides off exactly the same, and it's going to come with still 2 AA batteries operating the whole thing in that foregrip. I really like these new rear rubber grips though. They still untach or detach themselves in the center like the CS2. But now because the grips kind of, go over the back of this body a little bit more, or I should say over the back of the trigger frame, you kind of have to pop up the bolt to be able to release the back of the grips, which is kind of annoying, but it's not really something you're doing often. There's not a lot of reason to ever take the grips off, so they're a little bit more difficult now, but I really like how they kind of wrap around the back a little bit more. It looks way better, just kind of feels a little bit nicer. CS3 still has a very adjustable trigger. It has all those normal trigger adjustment points. You got post-travel, you have pre-travel, you have a magnetic return. But one of the unique things that came on the CS2 was the rake trigger. You can actually adjust the rake or the angle of the trigger. It's really cool. It's something we've seen really on the die guns for quite a while. I really like it. I'm a fan of these rake triggers. There's also going to be a mechanical trigger frame that's not actually out yet, but will sell for $300. It's also going to feature this rake style. So it's the first time we've ever seen a mechanical single trigger feature that rake. So hopefully we'll see that thing very soon. I mean, it's almost May now, so let's hope by June we have it. The CS3 still has the best brake beam eye system in the game, Planet Eclipse's light pipe system. It's an infrared sensor that's located on a board that sandwiches in between the body and the frame, and those eyes just peek out. Really not far enough to see all the way into the breech. Instead, that IR beam is directed through a prism in the eye cover into the breech. It's very good design. I really like this light pipe system. It's kind of reminiscent to the Dye eye pipe, but probably done a little bit better. After all this drama's done, I really like the CS3. And I've liked all the Planet Eclipse guns. There's not one that I'm like, oh, that one sucks. They're all really good, but there are not a lot of them that I probably would keep, right? I think that Geo 3.5 was my last high-end gun from Planet Eclipse that I really liked. I wasn't really a fan of the CS1. The CS1 was just a really big, bulbous, huge gun. And the CS2, I think they made a little too small. I really wasn't a fan of the grip frame as much on the CS2. I really like the grip frame on the CS3. Being it's a little bit different shaped, I think that I can get a little bit better hold on it. It's not as rounded, has a little bit squarer edges, so I can get a little bit, I think, firmer, better grasp on the thing. I really like it. The ergonomics are very good. I think they're the best on any gun that I've tried lately. And it shoots very well. And the only problem with these guns is they're $1,800. I mean, getting close to $200 or $2,000 is kind of crazy. And Planet Eclipse just released, yesterday, the 180R, the 180R, the 180R. 180R is funny sounding. And it's really good too. And it comes with a version of this OP core. And it's only $1,100. So it's, half-ish the price. So it's difficult. I mean, think that it's very good. And if you want literally the best paintball gun you can buy right now, I think the CS3 is your best option.